Welcome back. You're watching Ask the Prime Minister, where we're posing your questions to the PM. Prime Minister Lee is in studio with Editor-in-Chief Walter Fernandez and I discussing the issues you raised. In this final segment, we are looking ahead. We are examining the future of Singapore and what lies ahead for the country and its citizens.
In the poll that we took, one of the most popular questions was this perception about your cabinet and the fact that the people who are joining your cabinet are coming from the same few places. Top flyers from the civil service, the military. How are you going to ensure a diversity of experience, a diversity of views within cabinet?
Well, we have a significant number of people come into government from the public sector due to political leadership. SAF from the civil service, many of my colleagues. But at the same time, we've tried very hard to bring in people from the private sector. And I have some key members of the cabinet. Ng Eng Hen, who was a doctor, Shanmugam, who was a lawyer, Iswaran, he was in the government, but he went out to the private sector, he came back in. Indrani, another lawyer. I think that we need a balance of people from government who have had experience in the administration, but also from the private sector, experience how the economy works, and put them together. It's very hard to bring people in from the private sector, because once you've headed into the private sector, you've prepared yourself psychologically for that route. You're gaining the skills optimized for your career, whether a banker or lawyer or entrepreneur, and to change from being a successful lawyer to a successful minister. Not everybody can make that switch. And so we need to work very hard to identify suitable people, bring them in, and they have to have guts to take the chance to come in and maybe may not succeed. But we have to try and get a mix.
Has it become harder after the last general election?
I think so. I think it's got harder. It's not so certain, so people have to calculate the risks. But even more than that, there's more hurly-burly, there's more barracking, more flack on the internet. And it's not just the candidates, the families too. So why do you want to do that? You're making a good living, you're taking care of us, we are living quietly, placidly. Nobody disturbs us when we go to the hawker centers. Suddenly you go into public life, and I have to read all this stuff on the websites about me. And when I go out, I can't, I've lost my privacy. It's a very, very serious consideration. It's made it much harder. It is a serious problem.
Okay, well, we also asked a second poll question. This comes from a Lo Chi Kong, and he said Mr. Goh Chok Tong stepped down as Prime Minister when he was age 63, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew when he was age 67. So do you see yourself staying on as Prime Minister beyond the age of 67?
No, I will not be asked this question 67, 66, 65 until you figure out when I'm intending to retire. I do not have a specific date, but I've said that I shouldn't really still be Prime Minister at the age of 70. And I think we must have a successor in place, successor team in place, and ideally a successor in place well before that. And I think that's absolutely true. It's a very demanding job. It's not just emotionally or mentally you have to be alert, but physically, the traveling, the going about, you have to project. And you have to be on top of it. If you don't look on top of it, it shows straight away. And to do that, you cannot be a very old man.
We've actually lots of interest in this topic.
That's
We've
right,
had emails and tweets and Facebook messages. An email from Associate Professor Tan and Sir, who's asking what qualities do you think the next PM ought to have? Do you actually have a person like that in mind already?
Well, ideally, you have another Lee Kuan Yew. I think that's not going to happen. I mean, there's only one Lee Kuan Yew in many, many, many generations, in many, many countries. So we've been blessed, and we have to work with the talent which we have. We have good talent. We have people who have the commitment, who have the ability, who have the experience, collectively, to make the system work. And what you need is to be able to have these people be recognized and accepted, and that confidence built in them over time that they are a safe pair of hands, and then they can do their job. Even if you have a good person, if it's not known, well, where has he come from? You have a problem. I was very, very lucky. I had 20 years apprenticeship before I took over as PM. I don't think any other PM in Singapore is ever going to be as lucky as me. And I think Singapore will have to get used to the idea that you have people come in and then you will have a leader who has not been there quite such a long time. So he'll have to operate in a different sort of way, but he can make it work.
Do you expect that the premiership is going to be a shorter term moving forward as well, at a tighter
I think
cycle?
we are focused on getting a successor team. I don't decide who it is. They will have to decide amongst themselves who will be their leader. And then the public will have, Singaporean voters will have to decide whether they want this team to be their government.
In previous
I think
transitions,
that's the first and most important priority.
Prime Minister, in the previous transitions, the next generation leadership has always been quite clear, waiting in the wings. Some say this is less apparent right now. Have you assembled the core or the fourth generation of leadership?
Well, I've brought in a significant number of good people this last two elections. The most recent term, we've got Heng Swee Keat, we've got Chan Chun Sing, we've got Lawrence, Tan Chuan Jin, I've got Sim Ann, whom we've just promoted MOS, we've got Desmond, whom I've just brought in, I'm bringing in Low Yan Ling, I've brought in some people from the backbenchers. I think they are a good team. They've learned well, they've been plunged into a very deep end, very cold water, but they've worked very hard, they've learned fast. It still takes a while for people to completely learn about them and develop that familiarity and rapport with them. But their heart's in the right place, and I think they are shaping up. And around that team, we will have to build, and we will build the successors. I hope next election I'll be able to reinforce the team further. We're working at that.
How many more elections? I think that was a question that Hilary Teo posted on Facebook. How many more elections do you think before you have that entire...
There's never an end point to this. I mean, every election there will be turnover. Some will retire, some will a new tech team will go on. This is continually work in progress.
Okay, we're talking about the future leadership, but there are also many questions coming in about the future of Singapore, what kind of city we want to see. And actually, we have a video from our video booth from an Aaron Ng, and he's asking about the kind of city we want to see. Let's just have a look.
Would it be a city of just buildings of every shape and size, or would it be a city that belongs to everyone but no one at the same time?
So, PM, what kind of city do you...
Well, obviously, it can't be a city just of buildings. It has to be a city with spirit, with life, with vitality, with identity, and with pride. And I think that is what we are building in Singapore. I mean, when people come to Singapore, it's not just that they find the streets clean and trees green and the city nicely laid out and you've got Marina Bay, but it's the spirit of the people, how you work together, how you take care of the place, how you carry yourself with pride. I talked about Changi Airport in the rally. What makes it special? It's not just the tower. It's the way it works. You arrive, you know you have arrived. The customs, the immigration, the baggage handlers, the taxi drivers, everything clicks and everybody works with the next team. And that's what makes Changi unique and not so easy to replicate. But as with Changi, so too with our economy, so too with our government, so too with our whole society. It needs to be like that. People have to feel that this is ours. We will do something about it. It's not just the governments. This is Singaporeans. We are Singaporeans. We take pride in the city.
So what's the next chapter for the Singapore story then? I mean, can we still build an equitable nation but yet be exceptional as well?
You need to be both. I think if it's an inequitable nation, if there's a sense of social injustice, you will not be exceptional. I think being exceptional is essential because if you're ordinary, you're nobody. A city of 3 million people in it, dozens of such cities in Asia. Most of them you won't remember the names of. But Singapore, there's only one Singapore. And that is why Singaporeans enjoy not just a pride in their status in the world, but quality of life, jobs, opportunities, connections. Wherever you go, you're welcome, you're looked up to. And I think we always need to be that. But at the same time, it has to be a place where it will be a place where everybody has opportunities, where if you work hard, you can move up, where you may be poor, but you are not ashamed of your background, because it is what you are doing and what you're contributing which makes a difference. And I see no reason why we can't do that. We have the opportunities, we have the base. I think we have the society which is like that, where people can talk to one another, and you, whatever rank you are, they will talk to you and they say, Mr. Lee, let me tell you this. And you don't scrape, you don't bow. There must be courtesy and respect mutually, but a sense of equality and an egalitarian spirit.
Sorry, again, we've got some tweets coming in. Also from a Joshua, he says, can Singapore afford to slow down our pace of growth and competition? He fears that we will be overtaken by others, especially in Asia. Another one from Ivy, who says, how can we find happiness in our competitive society?
I think you find happiness in achievement, and competing, pressure, an appropriate amount of pressure, I think is a positive thing. If you're completely without pressure, you just sit back and relax. A holiday is good, 1 week, 2 weeks, the third week, or what are you doing with your life? So I don't think pressure in itself is a bad thing. Maintaining it at a sustainable pace and keeping on that achievement. I'm doing something meaningful. I want to do something. I'm getting up tomorrow out of bed. So many things which I'd like to do next. I think that's the attitude which you like people to have.
What you've sketched out for us, is that your vision of a global city and what Singapore is aspiring to be?
I think that's an important aspect of the ethos of Singapore, that you're always looking towards tomorrow, you're always trying to build, and we can be one of the best places in the world to live and to work and to play. And let's keep on maintaining that and improving on that. At the same time, we must have a sense of who we are, where we came from. We are not just a city in the middle of nowhere. You know, it can be in the South Pacific, you can be in the Caribbean, you can be in the Atlantic Ocean, and you're still Singapore. It's not so. We are here, Southeast Asia. We had a history. Our forefathers came here, they built this place. We took over the responsibility from them, and we are taking care of it and trying to carry it forward so that when our children take over the responsibility from us, they can build on it further. And you must have that sense of continuity. Where you came from, where are you going to? Then you know who you are and what you want to do in life.
Okay, well, we have just enough time for one last thought. Walter, anything?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about where we've been and where we're going to. I think let's take ourselves 2 years ahead to 2015, when Singapore celebrates 50 years of independence. It's a time when the nation is obviously going to be in a celebratory mode. And what I really want to know is, what have we learned from that first 50 years? Looking at other countries who have reached that milestone, do we have reason to celebrate? Do we have a certain sense of confidence in our future?
I think we will have ample reason to celebrate, but I don't think we should stop at celebration. It's not just fireworks and parties. I think we should give Thanksgiving. 50 years, we've had a successful half century of tremendous achievement. I think there must be a spirit of commitment, dedication of ourselves to the next phase, and a resolution that I want to take this further. 50 years is not a long time in the history of a nation, but at the beginning of the nation, 50 years is a long way to go. And if you look at other countries which have made this journey, I think you find it a very interesting comparison. You look at China, 5,000 years of history, but modern China, starting with the People's Republic in 1949, 50 years was 1999. And in that 50 years, they had had a very tough time. Grown enormously, but they had had ups and downs. They had had a great leap forward. It failed. They had the Cultural Revolution, tremendous upheaval. They've had great sacrifices and turmoil. And by 1999, they had had another 15, 20 years of reform and opening up under Deng Xiaoping, set on the path of growth. But enormous turmoil and difficulties on the way before they found themselves onto the right path. And then they were able to grow 1999 till now, they've transformed again. You take Israel, another country with 4,000 or 5,000 years of history from the Bible, but modern Israel, 1948, they became a country. In war, 1998, 50 years. They celebrated it in a very pensive mood. They'd fought 4 wars, they had survived, they were a nation. Their borders physically were secure, but they had the Palestinian problem on the West Bank. There was an uprising, suicide bombers, a lot of angst, soul-searching. What does the future hold? What is the long-term prospects for the country? But they were quite determined. Whatever happens, Israel will be here. Tomorrow we will survive. And every day I solve one problem. Every day I take the next step and I deal with the next problem as it comes. And today they're still here. Not without problems, but they're still here. They've got a very vibrant IT sector. They've got a tremendously creative and inventive economy and scientists and engineers. And they will survive. We've had 50 years, first 10 years, quite tough because separation, the shock, the British withdrawing, finding our feet, but we grew. After that, every decade, we made dramatic progress. After 50 years, Singapore is totally transformed. I think we give thanks. And to be pensive after 50 years, to be thoughtful, to have some soul searching, I think it's quite understandable. We're at a milestone. Where do we go next? But I believe that we have every reason to be confident that we can take it the next stage, ourselves and our children, and we will do that.
That's a very nice thought to wrap the show with. The Prime Minister has endeavoured to answer as many questions as time will allow. We've discussed the changing face of governance and the challenges involved in forging a new social compact. Prime Minister Lee has also given us something to be confident about looking ahead into the future of the country. We apologise if we've not had enough time to answer all of your questions, but I'm sure the conversations will continue. Thank you, Prime Minister, for engaging in such an open conversation with us about Singapore. Thanks to Editor-in-Chief Walter Fernandez, as well as to those of you who sent us your questions and comments throughout the show. I'm Sharon Tong, and you've been watching Ask the Prime Minister. Good night.